Today, we are going to unpack one of the most powerful mental shifts in all of human history, the Enlightenment. We're going to see how a bunch of thinkers didn't just question the rules, they basically invented the very idea of what it means for you to have rights. And it all kicks off with this one simple-sounding question. It's something we might not even think twice about today, but asking it back in the 18th century? Whoa, that was dangerous, that was revolutionary, and asking it was gonna change the world. So, to really get how mind-blowing these new ideas were, we first have to understand the world they were fighting against. Let's call it the world of the old rules, where power was simple, it was top-down, and it was, well, total. And that world ran on a system called absolute monarchy. In this setup, power wasn't something you earned or negotiated, you inherited it. One person, a king or a queen, had all the authority. What they said went, period. And they'd often say their power came straight from God. Okay, so you're probably thinking, why on earth would millions of people just go along with a system that gives one person that much control? And the answer is pretty simple. They were convinced the alternative was way, way worse. That scary alternative was called the state of nature. Thinkers like Thomas Hobbes basically painted this picture of a world with no rules, no laws, no government, just total chaos. A violent free-for-all where life was, as he put it, nasty, brutish, and short. An absolute ruler, he argued, was the only thing standing between you and that chaos. But then, something started to shift. A new way of thinking started bubbling up. This was a revolution for sure, but it wasn't fought with swords and muskets. It was fought with ideas, with logic, and with late-night debates. This was the Enlightenment, and it was all driven by this one huge idea. Hey, if we can use reason and science to figure out the laws of physics and how the planets move, why can't we use that same brainpower to design a better, more logical, and more fair way to govern ourselves? And leading this charge were the philosophers. Now, don't picture some boring guys in stuffy libraries. These were the intellectual rock stars of their day. They were rebels, they were celebrities, and they questioned everything people took for granted about power, about God, and about society. And where did these wild new ideas get passed around? A lot of the time, it was in private get-togethers called salons. You can almost think of them like secret clubs. Safe places where you could talk about really dangerous, radical thoughts without worrying that the king's spies were listening in. And out of all those hushed conversations, a powerful new logic started to take shape. It was almost like a step-by-step guide, a playbook for how to build a whole new kind of society, one based not on a king's divine right, but on the rights of everyday people. So let's walk through their logic, because it's basically the blueprint for many of the governments we have today. It's this powerful four-step argument that completely flips the old model of power on its head. And it all begins with a revolutionary idea about you, the individual. Okay, step one. This is the big one. This is the game changer, an idea most famously pushed by John Locke, natural rights. This is the idea that you are born with certain rights, like the right to live, to be free, and to own things. They are not a gift from a king. They are yours, just by virtue of being human. And a government's only real job is to protect those rights. Okay, so if we all have these rights, how do we make sure no one can just come along and take them away? Well, that leads us right to step two. We make a deal. We form a social contract. Even a guy like Hobbes, who was all for a powerful ruler, said that power had to be given or conferred by the people through some kind of agreement. So the social contract is basically a trade. We, the people, agree to give up a little bit of our total freedom, the freedom to do whatever we want, whenever we want, and in exchange, the government we create promises to protect our most important natural rights. It's a two-way street. But, and this is a huge but, this deal comes with a critical catch. It's not a contract that's forced on you. It has to be voluntary. And that brings us to step three, which was maybe the most radical part of this whole playbook: consent. A government only has a right to rule if the people freely agree to be ruled by it. And if you follow that logic to its end, you get to the grand finale, the ultimate conclusion of the playbook. If government needs our permission, our consent, to exist, then who's really in charge? It's not the king anymore. It's us, the people. And that's the principle of popular sovereignty. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's night and day, right? In the old world, power came down from God. In this new idea, power comes up from the people. You're not just a subject who has to obey, you're a citizen who is the ultimate source of power. And the ruler? They're no longer above the law. They have to answer to it, just like everyone else. It's a total power flip. So, how do you think the kings and queens of Europe felt about this new playbook? You know, this little instruction manual telling all their subjects that actually they were the ones with all the power. Yeah, as you can probably guess, they were not exactly thrilled. Their go-to weapon to fight back? Censorship. They banned books, they threw writers in jail, they did everything they possibly could to stamp out this intellectual fire before it spread. But the thing about powerful ideas is, once they're out there, they're really, really hard to get rid of. Now, this might all feel like it's from some dusty old history book, but here's the thing. These ideas from 300 years ago are still incredibly relevant. In fact, they form the basis of the social contract many of us are living under right at this very moment. All these key ideas we've talked about, from natural rights all the way to popular sovereignty, they're not just vocabulary words for a history test. They are the fundamental building blocks, the actual operating system for many nations all over the world today. If you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this image. The single greatest thing the Enlightenment did was it took the pyramid of power and it flipped it completely upside down. For thousands of years, everyone just assumed power flowed down from a ruler. These thinkers made the crazy, radical argument that real, legitimate power can only ever flow up from the people. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for today. Because this social contract, it isn't a one-time deal. It's an agreement we all participate in every single day. So as you look at the world around you right now, what part of that deal, that trade-off between freedom and security, do you think is the most important one for us to protect? Thanks so much for watching.